Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Thank you for taking time out of your day to check the video out. We have more PlayStation news, rumors, and leaks to go over and cover today. We're starting with a new PlayStation Showcase rumor coming from industry insider Jeff Grubb, who has been accurate in the past when it comes to information regarding stated plays as well as PlayStation showcases. Apparently, he's informing us that currently, internally at Sony, they're debating whether they should hold a full PlayStation showcase this summer rather than a stated play. He says internally, it sounds like they're debating, flapping between maybe making something this summer a full showcase versus another stated play, but they are considering a showcase. Now, I thought the timing of this was interesting considering what we just saw with the state of play. Obviously, a lot of people want to see Sony do a proper PlayStation showcase because this generation, they've been far and few in between. We got a couple at the launch of the PlayStation 5, and after that, we basically got one more in 2023, which a lot of people were disappointed with, and it seems like stated plays have essentially become the norm in terms of how they're going to just conduct revealing anything and everything. But it is worth noting that Jeff Grubb, he is a connected source here, so it'll be interesting to see what Sony ends up deciding. My only hope is that if they do decide to go with a showcase, they learned from the 2023 showcase that people want to see more than just some CG trailers and some Spider-Man 2 gameplay, right? If you're going to call it a showcase, it has to have more than that. But we're going to move on to the next topic, which continues to talk about Jeff Grubb giving us some information. According to Jeff Grubb, Marathon was not featured at this recent state of play because Bungie might be doing a separate showcase in April. Marathon wasn't there because they're probably going to do their own thing. Bungie does their own thing usually for Destiny. They're going to adopt that same "we're talking to our audience" strategy this year as well. So I think April we'll probably hear from them about Marathon, and it would just be its own separate thing from State of Play. So yeah, I was a little bit surprised that we didn't see Marathon at all. And this does make sense. This is kind of how Bungie has been known to operate. So I'll be really curious to see if this is how they decide to do it, what the overall response to it will be. And one other update that Jeff Grubb has given us regarding PlayStation Studios is that apparently internally Sony has decided to delay Fairgames to 2026. Now, there was never an official year or release year attached to this game, but it was assumed that it would come out sometime this year. But apparently it's not coming till next year. If I had to guess, it's because there are some major changes currently taking place when it comes to Fairgames. Some type of overhaul potentially since its initial reveal, because we saw what happened with Concord, and when you look at the fact that both Concord and Fairgames were revealed at the same time, they basically got the same reception, and we saw what ended up happening to Concord. So it makes sense that maybe they're going to want to delay this game and potentially make some big changes. Moving on to the next topic, though, we have some updates in regards to how well the PlayStation 5 is doing, how well the PlayStation business is doing. Being reported by Push Square, it says Sony has shipped over 75 million PS5 consoles worldwide. The number comes courtesy of the company's financial report, where it confirmed it shipped 9.5 million units during its third quarter, which ended December 31st, 2024. This actually means the PS5 closed the gap on the PS4 launch aligned by around 500,000 units, meaning the difference between the two devices is just sitting at 1.7 million units now. The PS5 has been selling better than its predecessor in the United States, but has been lagging behind in Europe due to its higher price point. And so it's worth noting that according to Sony, the system is doing extremely well under the circumstances, and that last quarter was absolutely massive for the console. It was actually their biggest holiday quarter so far for the PS5. They say that they're up 16% year over year, and they did confirm that the PS5 Pro did in fact help with this quite a bit. So yeah, I just wanted to inform you guys of this because, if you're somebody who's just kind of interested in knowing what's going on in the console space, there's always this conversation about, are consoles actually fading away? Are they not doing well anymore? Or, is maybe that not true and they're doing fine? Well, it depends on where you're looking, But in this case, when it comes to Sony's official financial report, the PS5 is doing incredibly well. It's in line with the PS4, and yeah, they just came off their best quarter ever. One other thing I want to mention here is this is the second year in a row where they sold over 20 million PS5 units, which is very impressive when you consider that the peak for the PS4 was 19.5 million in 1 year. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how the PS5 performs this year, because it definitely did better than Sony was expecting in 2024. Moving on from that, though, we have an update from Sony regarding Ghost of Yotei as well as Death Stranding 2. Sony enjoyed a record-breaking holiday with PS5, but it believes business could improve even further as it edges towards a new fiscal year. As part of the financial presentation, it reiterated that major first-party titles, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach and Ghost of Yotei, are slated to release this year. You may recall that there was, a time last year when the company said it wasn't plotting any major exclusives for 2024, which was a little misconstrued. Effectively, it meant that it didn't have anything on the scale of Spider-Man 2 or God of War Ragnarok in its roster, despite releasing the critically acclaimed Astro Bot. Sony does consider the aforementioned sequels from Kojima Productions and Sucker Punch to be massive releases, however, and it's predicting a monumental year for PS5 with other important third-party titles planned. Speaking to investors, Hiroki Totoki said, quote, "As for the next fiscal year, April 2025 to March 2026, first-party and third-party, we expect very good titles coming out, so we have a high expectation for the performance of the next fiscal year," end quote. So, yeah, this is something that I do think is worth highlighting, because these are two games that were noticeably absent from the recent state of play, and has thus led to people assuming that maybe they're going to get delayed or they're further out than we expect. But Death Stranding 2 is getting its own presentation, and there's still plenty of time to see more of Ghost of Yotei. But continuing to talk about Death Stranding 2, I just want to inform you guys that this game was rated a second time, which is very telling that the game is clearly going to be getting a release date very soon. This time it was rated in Brazil. Recently it was rated in Korea. So we now have two ratings. Seems like we're going to be getting that release date at the panel that is planned for Death Stranding 2 on March 9th. But moving on, we're talking about Housemarque's Saros. We have a little bit of new info here. This is coming from Push Square. It says some fans did not like how punishing Returnal was, as while there were tiny elements of progression, you were generally forced to start from scratch with each new run. While plenty of people loved this element of the game, others bounced off it, feeling they weren't making any meaningful progress. That's where developer Housemarque's new title will differ, however. According to the creative director, he says on the PlayStation blog that with Saros, which is coming out in 2026, it will feature permanent resources and progression, making every death valuable. He explained after every death you will face a changed world, but in Saros, you will be able to choose and permanently upgrade your loadout from an evolving set of weapons and suit upgrades to come back stronger to overcome the challenges you face. So while we fully expect the game to offer Housemarque's traditional flow of tough arcade gameplay, it seems that those looking for a sense of gradual progression will be rewarded here. Now, I thought this was absolutely worth highlighting because this is a major change, in my opinion anyway, with the upcoming game Saros compared to Returnal. This was an aspect of Returnal that made it quite challenging, and there are definitely some people who I think walked away from it because of that. I don't necessarily think that this is going to make it incredibly easy, right? But it definitely takes the edge off a little bit. Wanted to be sure to let you guys know about that. We're going to move on to the final two topics here, which is actually regarding Phil Spencer and him doing a recent interview and giving us more insight into their approach to releasing games on PlayStation. So this is a report coming from VGC, and they say Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer has shed more light on the company's decision to release more Xbox games on PS5. In an interview with the Xbox Era podcast, Phil Spencer was asked about comments he made during an FTC hearing in 2023, in which he claimed that every time an Xbox-owned studio sold a game on the PS5 store, Sony's 30% cut was being used towards deals to block other third-party games from coming to Xbox. Now that Xbox is releasing numerous games on PS5, Spencer was asked if he was now less focused on Sony's 30% cut and more focused on the 70% cut Xbox takes on each of its games sold on PS5. Spencer replied that this was the case and that trying to get PS5 owners to move to Xbox instead of just selling games directly to them was no longer a viable strategy. It's maybe not what I was going to say on Stand at the time, but yeah, I would love to make all of the money for all of the games that we ship right now, Spencer told Xbox Era. Obviously, we make more on our own platform. It's one of the reasons that investing in our platform is important, but there are people, whether it's their libraries on PlayStation or Nintendo, whether it's that they like the controller better, they just like the games that are there, and I don't want them to look at that and say, well, there's no way that we should be able to build a business there, find fans for our franchises there. I'm not trying to move them all over to Xbox anymore. We're all so invested in where our games are. Let's just allow more people to play. And yes, the 70% we make on games on other platforms is helpful to us being able to build great portfolios like we showed at Developer Direct, and I hope this will continue to show through the rest of the year. Elsewhere in the interview, Spencer was asked why Xbox's recent Developer Direct showed PlayStation logos for the games it was showing rather than using the strategy Nintendo and PlayStation usually implement for their presentations, where they only show their logos during game announcements, and it's later revealed they're coming to other systems as well. Spencer replied that he feels transparency is important and that if one of the games it features in a Developer Direct is coming to another platform, it won't hide the fact in an attempt to suggest Xbox is the only option. I just want to be transparent with people, Spencer replied. If we're shipping on Nintendo Switch, we're going to put that. If we're shipping on PlayStation, if we're on Steam, people should know the storefronts where they can get our games. So yeah, I thought it was just worth going over what Phil Spencer had to say here because obviously, the messaging around what they're doing, why they're doing it has changed dramatically, I would say, since this time last year. But maybe it's not that surprising. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many more of these Microsoft titles are revealed during the next couple months for PlayStation 5. But there you go. Just wanted to keep you guys in the loop with that. But that's going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative. If you did, leave it a like, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.